Hey crew, welcome back. Either continuing on from the last video, or perhaps you're just coming back to glance and double check on how a few things are done with constraints when it usually deals with circles and arcs. So with that being said, jumping right back in here. Most common constraint we deal with circles and arcs is just doing some layout lines. It's very common in our drawings that when you see a drawing all made, a technical drawing, that the center lines of that drawing can very often be used as really good construction lines when we're first designing it, because that's just, it shows those relationships between one circle to the next. So to get lines to stick to your center point, let me grab a circle down here, go 6, enter, there's our circle. The best way to do it is to honestly just start at the center and draw lines out in the directions you need it. Okay. Perhaps one at an angle too. The one thing I'll say, I'll convert these all to construction, making sure I deselect in between each one, or I could have held shift and clicked each one and converted them all at once. But no matter what, after you convert them to construction, they're still technically blue, so you got to click off to deselect. Okay, now these circles are locked on, or sorry, these lines are locked on the circle center point. So if I grab this line, everything moves. They are all anchored at that point, and that's a really good thing. What often happens is people will draw a line, they go over here and they hover out, and you get that dotted line that's tracking. It says, hey, you're lined up with the center. So you click and you draw it down through and you convert it to construction and think everything's great. But you go to move it, sorry, or the line, and look, it slid off the center. It really wasn't actually locked on. Those dotted lines are just references. They're not permanent. They're just to help get you close, or, you know, really just that. They're there to help get you close. If you want something to be stuck on and you happen to draw the line first, you have to use the coincident constraint. So I go up there and click that coincident. Remember, that means like putting a dot on a dot, or a line on a dot, or two endpoints on top of each other. So in this scenario, it's just really anywhere on the line. Now if you pick the midpoint, that is significant actually, so you have to be careful. Usually in this scenario, I would just say the line in general needs to be on that dot. Escape, and there. Now it always stays that way. Okay, so you can either draw your lines off to the side and coincident them on, or you can just draw individual segments that stem from the center point. Straight up, right click, restart. And even as much as I know we should not have multiple segment lines like this technically is right now. We have an upper segment and a lower segment. When it comes to just doing construction work, I think we'll be okay. All right, that's the best way right now to put lines on center points, and that holds true even when it's an arc. Okay, so even if I have an arc here and I need some kind of line going through that as a reference, I'm just going to start that line right on the center point, go straight up, construction that, so I have it as a reference. Now this is a common scenario when we might have to pull an angle on how wide the arc is, because then now I can put a line here as well, construction that, maybe throw a little dimension in that says 30 degrees. Oh no, if I want this to be vertical, I'll go up and get a constraint that says vertical and assign this line to always be that way. That way that straight up is kind of a 0, 30 degrees over, and then I could trim off what I don't need. And trim is X on the keyboard. If you didn't, that's why I didn't go up to the toolbar. Remember, and all the tools up here, when you hover on them, right behind the title in the parentheses, it tells you what the keyboard shortcut is. And there's a handful of them that are pretty easy to use. Circle is not one of them. Okay. All right, so that's putting lines on points for doing layout work with circles and arcs. The other common scenario we have is called concentric. That is when all our circles stack on one center point. So you can see in this example, these circles are all concentric. Think of bullseye rings. Up here, not concentric. And I can see the 3 separate center points for the 3 separate circles. Now sometimes we want that. Cams, other obscured objects. But if you drew this and you accidentally do want it concentric, there is a tool for that in our constraints. Another way to think of it is kind of like parallel for circles. But I click on that tool and I can either click the 2 circles I want concentric, or I can click their center. No, I can't. I can just continue to click circles and make everything concentric. Right. And then if I readjust their size, you'll see that they stay all sharing the same center point, nice and evenly matched up there. Okay, so concentric, click on the circles, not the center points. Sorry, sometimes I still confuse the tools for which points I even reference, and I've been doing this for a while. All right, horizontal and vertical constraints when it comes to circles. So most often used for lines, horizontal and vertical constraints, but can also be applied to circles. So I'm going to grab the vertical constraint here. And what you do is you click center point to center point. This time I got it right. To align those points, if you want to always keep those in line with each other vertically, point to point. And there we go. Kind of got our snowman going on. Upside down snowman, I guess. Okay, now I got to fix it now that I said that. And bring that one closer. Yeah, there we go. There's our little bit of a snowman. But all the points are staying in line vertically. Same thing down here. I can do horizontal constraints across the center points to make them all nice and level with one another, and then space them as needed. Now some people, as I made a note here, would often maybe just draw a line in the first place, make it construction, and then place your circles along that line. And that is fine too. There's always multiple ways to do things in Inventor. All right, then we come to tangent. This is a biggie. We use tangent all the time in Inventor. Okay, it is a fundamental rule that shows up in so many sketches and drawings that we do. And really, a reminder is that tangent is a smooth transition from one shape to another. Think of these big circles here as a stack of pipes. All the pipes are just touching one another at one point. Well, one point between these circles and one point over here. They don't cross each other. There's not a gap in between them. They just touch. And we can even have lines that are tangent to circles. In fact, let me turn on the constraints. We can see the points popping up here. So how do we make these scenarios happen? Well, let me draw. Right click constraints off. Let me draw some circles down below. Just make a little smaller stack of pipes this time. And maybe I want them all the same size first. Maybe 2s, right? Enter. 2, enter. 2, enter. Hopefully you're learning to use that number pad. It's a lot faster. There we go. We have circles all the same size. Who am I kidding? I like symmetry. Need one more. Gotta have the pyramid shape. 2, enter. There we go. That's even faster. Dimension them while you're drawing them. Alright, so maybe I'll put a horizontal constraint on that bottom row. So my bottom row is nice and level. Okay, and didn't look like they moved. They might have been tracking as I was making them. But I'd rather know that for sure. And from here I can start doing tangents. So right there's the tangent constraint. Click one circle, click the next. They snap together just perfectly tangent. And then click the second and the third. Perfectly tangent. Now let's start working our way up. This circle to this circle, tangent. And this one circle can technically slide around this one yet at various tangent points. It's that we need to still put a tangent. If I want it to sit perfectly on the other one, we have to do another tangent to tangent relationship on that side. And then that locks this circle down with the lower two. Again, tangents. Right there, tangent constraint. This circle to this one, and this circle to that one. And mathematically, it's probably going to give this one, create that also tangent, but let's also try to apply it. And over constraining, just like when we dimension, we sometimes get this message, and so be it. It means it is tangent. And finally, I'll wrap this up with my top one. There, the pyramid is built. Everything looks nice and put together. There's no gaps, there's no overlaps. It's all one perfectly touching system at the points in between the circles. Now the little side note is tangent always occurs where you draw a line from center to center. Where that line crosses, that's always tangent. Okay. Now what if I had a line and I wanted that to be tangent to circles? I'd put this line outside here first. I don't worry about trying to make the line perfect right away. I just get it close to what I want, and then now I can use tangent to constrain it maybe up top, and then tangent down below, and then I could use trim or X on the keyboard to get rid of what I don't need. Okay. And I could even start trimming out some of this other stuff in there. Perhaps that's a shape I was after, or whatever. But we often lay out the fundamental shapes first, and then worry about trimming them away later. Now sometimes you can't trim when there's dimensions, so you may have to delete a dimension, trim it, and then put a dimension back on. What else here? Another common scenario, maybe I got to fill in a gap with an arc. So maybe just, I know I just need a partial arc here. So then I can sketch that about where it goes, use tangent to then control the relationship to the other geometry around it. And I can either dimension it before it was placed or later. And you can see by changing that diameter, or radius, I mean, it changes how that looks quite a bit. Try trimming that off what I don't need. There I go. That's working nicely. Trim those out even now. Everything's trimming right now, of course. It is not, like I said, very often when we trim stuff and it doesn't work, it's because the dimension might be holding it to size. Alright, so those are some common tangents. When I'm looking at drawings, what I'll be looking for is making sure there's no gap, once again, or if there's overlap, or here where it looks pretty close to tangent, but usually the telltale sign is that the line will look a little bit thick or kind of fuzzy. So if I zoom in, oh, sure enough, there is an overlap. That's kind of an easy way to spot tangent. The other way would be to turn on my constraints with F8. And you can see down here, getting all the tangent symbols of the demo. But when I come back up here, there's not any tangent symbols. So it's also a quick way for me to check if people have been using the proper constraints where they should be. So here's a common scenario where we have two circles that are 6 inches apart, and I used a line to hold them that distance apart and to help make sure that they're level. Now I could have also just placed a dimension from point to point and used horizontal constraints. It's up to you. But now I need to fill in the bottom half with the same arc and trim it to length. So I just know about where my arc goes. I drew the arc and I got the radius first. And now I just use my tangent constraint to click on the items that I want to have tangent. Don't worry that it crossed right away. Just go click. Don't be afraid to zoom in either. Click the next set of tangent points or tangent pairings. And that'll help snap, push, pull that into place so it is just what you need. And then finally, I can use trim or X on the keyboard and trim off what I don't need. And in a scenario like this, it might also mean including trimming this all out to be left with that shape like that. Alright, those are common constraints when dealing with circles and arcs. Again, a little bit long, but there's a lot to learn here, and it will come with time and with practice, okay? So if you get frustrated, just remember to delete, try again, or undo, try again, Maybe come back and take a glance at this video and see how I did something, and then try again on your own project, okay? Good luck, and we'll see you in the next video.